everybody. Thank you so much. I hate when that intro, when it goes, I just want to dance. I want to keep dancing. My name is Melody McAllister, and I know it might be one of your first times seeing my book chat, but it's so good that you're here. And I have a wonderful guest author with us today. And before I introduce, of course, she's my friend Rachelle Dene Poth. I'm sure that most of you already know her. She's very well known in the education circle. She's written several amazing books. And the reason she's so special to me is, of course, we go live a few times a week when, in her community, her Thrive and ED community. But Rachelle, I don't know if y'all know this, but she was on my very first book chat. I said, hey, does anybody want to join me on an episode? I'm doing this crazy thing. I want to talk about what it's like to be a writer. And Rachelle was like, yeah. So she was on my first episode. And then a few months ago, we got to talk about her unconventional ways to thrive in EDU, which actually is very connected to the book we're going to talk about today. But yeah, so this is her third time. You might be like my most visited guest. I don't know. I'll have to figure that out. How are you doing? A little bit about you.
Yeah. Would you say tell a little bit about me? You covered all the bases.
Yeah.
And I have to say I loved seeing all of your book chat, like the intro, and I love the music, but I was waiting to see the lips like we see on Mondays and Fridays, and it wasn't there. So thank you for having me on yet again. I don't think I remember realize it. I was on the first one, but that was with it wasn't just me, so that was good. There were a couple of us on, and I don't know how long ago that was that we did the one for unconventional, but gosh, I don't even want to think. It's probably September, August. I think it might have been the summer, which feels like a year ago. So thank you for having me on again to talk tonight.
No, I'm so glad. Thank you for joining me. It's such a wonderful time always whenever I get to spend time with you, whether it's in person or virtually. And I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. It is such an honor for you to tune in tonight. And I do this every Wednesday. I have a new guest author. So anyway, let's talk about and wait, we are actually doing this across our country. Like I'm in Alaska and you're in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
So this is why it's so amazing. And so let us know where you're coming through, if you're watching, and how you're doing. So tell us a little bit of why you decided to write True Story. What was the premise of this? Tell us about what's behind this.
Yeah, there's a lot of tabs and Post-it notes in that book there. I'd love to know what they are.
You will.
Yeah, it's hard to think back now because I wrote the book. I started it, I guess it was fall of 2019. Is that right? I guess so. Yeah. Ooh. Fall of 2019. But what I had already written a couple of books, and in some of the other books, I was talking about things I had done in my classroom, different experiences, funny things that happened with my students or lessons learned from students, or their ideas that they came up with for using some of these different technologies that we were using. And then I thought, gosh, over the years, there are so many stories of things that happened in my classroom that were funny things, or they became like our class story, or there were moments where I kind of lost my cool and yelled, or just, everything in between. And so I started to make a list of all of the different stories and memories that I had, because from each of them, I started to realize oh yeah, that was a lesson for this, or that's a way that I connected with this student, or this is the way my students felt connected to one another. And I ended up it was on notebook paper first, but then I thought, I'm going to lose this. And so then I started putting it into a document. And I remember probably about a year and a half ago now, or close to it, when I was working on it, some of the students in one of my Spanish classes knew that I had written a couple of books, and they're like, how come we're not in any of your books? And I said, what makes you think that you're not in any of my books? And they're like, really? And they said, are we? And I said, well, not by name or anything. I said, but just different experiences and so forth. And they said, no, we don't believe you. So I showed them the list that I had, because I printed it out. It was a Google document. And they were laughing because it didn't say by name, but it was just like, whatever, like the candy, there's in the book, there's like the candy and the bobblehead, right? So there's these different stories. Mm-hmm. And they said, oh, we know who that was. And I said, yeah, but I'm not, if I put it into the book, I'm not going to, hey, thanks for joining. I said, I'm not going to say by name. It's just, what was the lesson from it? So that was part of it. And then the title came to me just because I remember telling certain stories over the years where I would tell somebody, whether it was a teacher, a friend, family, they'd be like, no, that's not true. There's no way that happened. I would say, seriously, it's a true story. Like that actually happened. And it's one of those that's kind of like unbelievable. And so whenever I signed for this book and the other one that'll be coming out later this year, The Things I Wish ... knew, I was trying to kind of come up with like, what could I write about? But I didn't want it to be just about me. And so the true story came to be part of it. And then I started to get some different stories from, educators sharing, but I really didn't know how I was going to put it all together. And so thinking back, there were a lot of other stories that happened along the way that I added in there, but it helped me to really reflect on like when I started teaching, the challenges that I had, and some of the things that I forgot about along the way. Or later on, we've had students come back, or we've all had students come back and say, oh, I remember that we did this in class, or, I'm so thankful that you did this. And for years, I never had that happen. And then in the last 5 or 6 years, I've had some students come back and say something that they experienced while they were in the school, in our classroom. And, like, you just never know. And so a lot of the lessons I try to think like, yeah, I was so mad, but what lesson did I learn from that? And that's what I put into the book. And it's not just me, it's about like all of the kids. So I asked people to submit stories to one of the books and just said, what's a story that you've told that people really don't believe? Or what is something that a kid taught you, whether it's a good lesson, bad lesson, something funny that you can share. And that's it. That was a really long answer. So I'm gonna stop talking now. So
oh no, it's great. I love it. And I love it. I love how you incorporated the notebook paper in there. And if you can see the book behind you with the cat on it, like all of these books are, they are connected, and they're connected kind of visually, but they're also connected how you made the book, like instead of chapters, you broke it up into themes, into the Thrive theme. And I just thought that was really clever. And that's what you stand for. And it's kind of something that you just started and then you embodied it completely. And I love that you stand for that. And we'll talk about what Thrive means in just a second. But I also wanted to talk about your vulnerability, because when you read this story, you're very like vulnerable. You talk about like how you've changed as an educator. And I enjoyed reading this story about the 5 girls that were in your Spanish class, that you like made this special Spanish class, and it kind of transformed you. They started calling you mom, because at first you were like, I'm not going to, I'm just kind of be separate. Like you just have this idea of what a teacher should be and separate from that. But then as the year went on, you just kind of got connected to these girls. They started calling you mom. And at first you were like, I don't know about this. But then you just took it on. And I love that. And then here you are sharing all of these wonderful experiences, but it started with being vulnerable and talking about that transition that went on in your own life. And I thought that was such a sweet story. And you have a great collection of people who contributed this. I contributed to this. And even just being able to read my story, I was so proud of this. Like, I am so proud of this book, not just because I'm a contributor, but it is such a lovely collection. And everybody who did, they really shared their hearts. Do you have, I hate to ask this, do you have a favorite story in here?
Oh, that's, it's so hard to pick favorites. There are so many. I mean, I have a paper on my wall over here that has a list of everybody who shared a story, people who contributed, the sketch notes, who worked on the cover. And when I go through, I look at the names, I remember all the stories. And I think about how many times I've read the stories and how many of them, as I was reading them and putting them in and kind of, making them fit and trying to figure out where to place them, like how many times I cried. And I don't say that easily. Like my students, I would always say, oh, my eyes are sweating. But there are some stories that are, I mean, you're laughing and crying. And then there are some that are really sad. And each one has so many important lessons. And the other thing that was kind of hard about this is I had no idea how I wanted to organize it. I had it into chapters at the beginning. I had themes of chapters, and then I scrapped that. And then I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to put into it. And then I decided to go with the theme of Thrive. And then I went back and read all the stories again. And I tried to think about which story, like each story, what theme I thought it connected with the most. And so many of them connected with more than one theme. I'm like, well, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but I don't know if I can pick. I mean, I loved your story because it resonated with me because of like my bobblehead, because something got broken in my classroom. But at the end of the day, what really matters is it the materials and things that we buy, or is it the relationships and that support we provide for students? And so reading your story, I remember I was walking in the neighborhood when I was reading it because you sent it to me, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've experienced this so many times where I got upset because something got broken the bobblehead, which has been a great running joke for like 4 years now. And those students will be, some of them are like, you seriously put that in the book? I'm like, yeah, because it's a lesson that I learned about, should I care that my Don Quixote bobblehead got broken?
Yes, because we can't have nice things all of the time.
I say that every single day, a couple of times. Something drops, something, I'm like, that's why we can't have nice things all the time. And I think I only have a few of those students still in class. And some of them are still in our school. But, anytime I say that, they just laugh, or they'll come in and they'll say, hey, where's the Don Quixote bobblehead? I'm like, safe over there behind my desk where nobody can reach the bobblehead. So, no, I loved your story. I also loved the one by Holly, which was talking about like dyslexia, and Dr. Harvey sharing his story about his student.
Oh my gosh.
I can't even, I will cry. I cried so many times reading that, but, there are so many throughout. Just, Dennis Griffin had a great story about like going to the student's house, and the kid was just like, all right, I'm going to go with you. Worrying about, the students, and do they have food? Do they have clothes? And sometimes like we're in there, we're set. And I was like this, I got to teach, I got to do these things, and not seeing like the student and what they need. It was just like, I have to cover verbs today. Okay, that's nice, but what else matters? And so reading through these stories, and it gave me kind of a chance to stop and really think about how I've been in the past year too, as I've put the book together and learned from the different perspectives of people. And no, I enjoyed it. It's a lot of work to take and get other people's stories. And then, I did a lot of my own writing, but I wanted to share enough of other educators. So I kept asking for more and more. I'm like, anybody else have a story you want to share? And so I was really happy to have, I think, including myself, like 38. And then I keep looking at the wall, like 12 that created a graphic or something for, and then 2 that did the But yeah, so the next book is actually, I think I'm up to 58 people in that one, and
holy moly,
it's way less me, more everybody else. So I love sharing stories.
Well, first of all, I want to hear. So I showed it on the screen, but you broke up your not into chapters, but into themes. And I think this is a very original idea. And so it's Thrive, which stands for T for tenacity, H for honesty, R relatability, I integrity, V vulnerability, and E empathy. And I think you did a great job of grouping these stories. And also, so because I have the book and those of you watching might not, what Rachelle did was when somebody contributed, it was like a vignette, and then she talked about it. She put in her own experience and just kind of summed it up in a way that just made it more relatable. And honestly, there were very few stories in here that I couldn't relate to and as a teacher, And then when we talk about the wonderful contributions of art, this is my favorite one. And this is by Julie Woodward. It says, hey, those kids, they're not giving you a hard time. They're having a hard time. And honestly, that's one of the struggles we have as educators. We have so much going on, just like you said, and the kids have so much going on. So you have to find where it intersects, where you can meet their needs. And I have several stories that I bookmarked. If you ever want me to, that really touched me, made me cry. I'm not going to lie. I cried. My eyes sweated a lot. But it's also like a good thing. They made me laugh too. One of your contributors, Brianne Fennell, who was our friend and also an EduMatch author, I thought her contribution, she talked about a little girl, and then she wrote I thought the style that she contributed was very interesting because she wrote it in a lyrical, poetic form. And she was able to laugh because kids are very honest, and it made me laugh. So I don't want to just focus on that it made me cry, because it made me laugh too. And I thought it was very clever. And is it okay if I share just a tidbit of what she wrote that I liked about her poem?
Absolutely.
So she said, so this little girl wrote her a little funny note and picture, and it said, roses are red, violets are blue. I don't care what they say. I love you. That's very honest from a little kid. And she had this cute little picture. And so Brianne contributed in this very, very beautiful poem. And at the end it says, so when you are given a student with a fever to draw, she may not like your assignments or do them at all. She may teach you something instead. If you think you should change her, well, you are misled. And I thought, oh gosh,
know.
if you've been in the classroom for any time at all, like, you have those doodlers and all they want to do is draw. They don't want to do your assignment. And it isn't our business to change them at all. And I thought she captured that so well. Oh my gosh, I'm getting goosebumps. Sorry.
Yeah, and if I didn't notice doodling, if I was my old self and I would have yelled at somebody for doodling, I wouldn't have book covers for some of my books. Because I mean, the first book and this one, Julie did the background, the wording, and the notebook, which also was kind of symbolic in a way because of the story that I tell about my friend John that's in it too. And always having a notebook. And so it wasn't like I said, hey, can you put something together with a piece of notebook paper? She just did that. And then I kind of put hers with the drawings by hand and with the kids that hand. What I did too was I just said, here are a couple of the like kids that are described in this book. And whenever Han described this we had a school board meeting. And they said, well, how did you come up with the characters? And Han said, well, Miss Poth just kind of gave me a couple of the descriptions of them a little bit. And I just basically put them into like any type of stereotypical representation that I could come up with. And I just had to make a couple changes because there were too many holes in the pants or something. And that was it. So I'm really happy with the cover. And I tried creating it on my own and it just didn't go very well. So yeah.
Well, your love for your students and their contributions is something that I really admire about you. And like every single one of your book has a student contribution. So I don't think this should be any different. I love it. But I want to ask you, yes, you have like several books out, and I'm going to drop the link. If you, and you know what, here, it's on the ticker too. If you want to go to bit.ly/Poth Books, you'll see all of Rachelle's books. How was writing this book different than writing the others?
That is an excellent question. This one was different because let's see, that's the fifth one. And the first one was not about like technology or anything. It's just about the relationships and teaching and stories. And then this one also was about the stories, but it was definitely a book where I shared a lot more. And like you said, being vulnerable, which 15 years ago, I mean, I would never say that, but the things that I say now and own up to now, it's like, what do I got to lose? I know that I needed to change. I just wish I would have known it back then, and I didn't. And so every day I try to think about, what are my actions? How am I interacting with students? What am I focusing on? And there are some days I I need to pick up that book and read it and snap myself back in to think like, okay, Rachelle, don't worry about not covering all of these things today. Are the kids okay? Checking in on them. But with these stories and putting this together, it was definitely personal because all of the people that shared these stories, I mean, they were being vulnerable and sharing them too, and admitting if they had made a mistake or something that they had missed along the way, or just opening up, like Dr. Harvey's story. I mean, that is a deeply personal, emotional experience that he shared, but one that has such a powerful message. And I'm so thankful that people were willing to just, here's my story. You can share it with everybody else. And the support that I've gotten from that has been awesome. But putting it together, taking that risk with not having chapters and hoping that I had enough different stories that, anybody who reads it, that something would resonate with them. It doesn't matter, even if you're not in education. I mean, the stories that are in here, I think just help you to think about how we interact with people in general, like our daily interactions, the moments that we have, our responses to things, especially at a time like now where things are stressful. I mean, we're anxious, we're frustrated, we're up and down all over the place. And it's hard sometimes to kind of get out of that and think like, yeah, let me just focus on something right now. Like what matters, like forget about all the other stuff and take the moments to just appreciate what we have or check in with people and make sure that they're doing okay. And those are things that I definitely need to be better at. I try, but sometimes, we were talking before we went live. It's like, oh my gosh, I have so many things to do. Like, okay, just stop. But I don't know. But putting this book together, it was a little bit stressful only because I wanted to do everybody's story justice. I wanted to make sure that I had the story in there the way that they would want it, that I put it into a place in the book where it fit, that other people would, read it and take something away from it. And I don't know what else I could say about it, but it did have a personal connection just because the true story. And then my friend John that I write about in there, which that wasn't the original thing, but I would always say true story. And it wasn't until after he passed away that I would catch myself and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've been saying that. And I wonder, you wonder, you're like, where did I pick that up saying that? Was it because he would always go, seriously, that's true story. Like this really just happened. You're like, get out of here. No, it didn't happen. And did that become, you pick up these things from your friends, their habits, their mannerisms, their words. So I don't know. That was just kind of a rambling answer. So the book is not a rambling.
No, never. I loved, Dr. Harvey's story because, it was very special. And if you would like to pick up this book, you can actually get an autographed copy for a reduced price right now if you go to bit.ly/bookorderpoth. And I hope you'll take up this offer because number one, hey, it's a discount. I never pay full price for anything, right? No, but actually, this book, it's so endearing because it's so honest. I think that people outside of education could get a lot out of reading this. I think that a teacher that is preparing to go into the classroom for the first time would get a lot out of this. I think a veteran teacher who was in the midst of teaching in a pandemic would get a lot out of this because every contribution is from such an honest place. And yes, we make mistakes. We know as educators, we are not perfect. We know as human beings, we are not perfect. But here's the thing, those of us that contributed and those of us probably watching, we learn from it, we reflect on it, and we do better. And we take that lesson because it is impacting, and that's just humanity. That's how we grow. I want to share a story by Melissa Hayes, who was a mutual friend, but I met her through you not too long ago.
Yeah.
She writes about being a teacher mom. Her daughter has Down syndrome, and she talks, it comes from a place. I'm sorry when I get like caught up in my words. It's usually because I'm excited. So she comes from a place as an educator and as a concerned parent who thinks, what is my place to advocate for my child, but also let my child navigate her own direction. And she writes about how her daughter, who was often separated several different times and growing up in the public school, how Melissa came back and helped her daughter to be noticed and how to take charge. This was such a beautiful story. And then she writes, these lessons are from the heart. And she's talking about her daughter's heart. And what's so ironic is that I expected the teachers to teach Abby all about empathy, kindness, and acceptance. But in reality, she is teaching all of us. Mm-hmm. And what is so wonderful about your book, it's like, this is not a how-to. This is not like, you're going to do better if you do this. This is the book about, these are all the things that our students are teaching us if we just are aware of it. They're teaching it through our mistakes. They're teaching it through the good things that we do. And they're teaching it through us even during a pandemic. You talk about the pandemic in here, which I think is brilliant. Yeah, it's such an honest place. And that's what I want. These stories are absolutely so vulnerable and honest. And then here we have another one. This one made me cry, from Jess Boyce. Mm-hmm. She talks about, we've all been so frustrated by those students that we have tried for so long to break through. And she talks about how she was at her wit's end and she finally raised her voice back with this student, and the student yelled, "But I'm hungry." Mm-hmm. God, how many of us have felt that? Like, that is where it's coming from. That, right. Like, I seriously cried. I cried on that. Yep. Dawn, thank you so much for joining. She says, love you both and all that you bring to this space. Can't wait to read your book, Rachelle. Yes, it is amazing. Thank you, Dawn.
Thanks, Dawn.
Can't wait to read your book also. But yes, this is such a worthy read. And almost like all of your books, Rachelle, you don't have to read it from cover to cover. Like, you could open up. Like, this is kind of what I do with the Bible. Just open it up, boom, and what am I reading? It's really a good read.
And that's not intentional. Like, I don't know how that happens. That, there's no spoilers really. So like, if you read the end of it, it's not going to give you the whole picture of the whole book and any of the books. But I don't know. I think at least with this book too, under those themes, maybe if you're like looking for, honesty or whatever the theme is, and read those, who knows, or just do what you did, just pick a page and read the story there. You can't, there's not like the list of like the title, because in the other ones, I had guest chapters, and this one I just wanted shorter stories, and some of them were a little bit longer, but some of them were just very, very quick. And I don't know, I was able to have more stories
Yeah,
this one. So yeah, I love the ones
I
that you
love it.
shared. So I hope people read. And I love what you said too about, I mean, for anybody, like a new teacher, a veteran teacher, anybody, any amount of years, especially whenever you're feeling like, whatever you're feeling, if you're like, I'm not reaching the kids, or I'm not making a difference, or I'm having problems in my classroom management like I did, or I'm losing my temper like I did, and all of these, to read it and to know like you're not alone. Other people have experienced it, and what is it that you can take from that? And more importantly, like share your story too. Like don't just, like I said to myself for years, and now here I am just telling everybody everything about it. But it's, I want people to avoid that same experience that I placed myself into, but I was afraid of being vulnerable. And right now I'm just like, you have to be, because if we're not, like, the kids look to us. And I never realized this either. I'm thinking, well, why should I share who I am with them? Well, because they're experiencing the same kind of challenges we do now as adults, the same thing. And so telling them like, yeah, I'm like, do you know how many times I got an F on a test? And I told them 2 weeks ago about what I got in my property law course in law school. And, and how that made me feel. And I said, yeah. And I cried for like 3 days, because it was like a devastating, and I keep freezing, a devastating experience for me, because I knew what I put into it. But at the end of the day, this is what I learned from it. And 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have told that story, because I wouldn't admit that I cried over a grade, but there was a reason I cried over the grade, because I knew that I gave it all that I had. But at the end of the day, I knew that I'd given it all that I had, and I couldn't have done any better. I mean, there's nothing that I could have thought of. So sharing that with a kid that says, okay, yeah, so I tried and I didn't do well. So what do I learn from that? Easier said than done when you're in high school and you got the grades, but same as an adult, but I don't know.
Exactly. I think your amazing ability to just be real with your students and love them where they are is exactly why you have so much to write about, why you have so much to share and reflect on. And I think it's just wonderful. I did drop the link, so because we are getting close to the end of our book chat. But if you are struggling right now and you feel like, this pandemic has isolated you, we have an amazing group going on in facebook.com/groups/thrive-in-edu that we welcome you to join. It's where we are learning how to thrive despite what's going on. And it's not like we ignore the bad things going on. We're just trying to band together and be educators that we can be proud of for our students and ourselves. So I want to invite you, and that's something that Rachelle started this summer, which I'm so proud to be a part of also. And before we go, would you mind sharing like or reading like your favorite part of the book?
I thought you forgot about that part.
I didn't.
Oh, I don't know what part to read. It's so hard to pick something to read. I know we talked about this before too. I was like, I don't know what to read.
I said, if you don't know, I'll tell you, because I know.
I know. Yeah. No, I think you actually covered all of it. I don't think I need to read anything. You read some, so
I'm gonna read some if you're not going to. First of all, I want to just show you. She dedicated this book to her friend John, and I just think this is a lovely photo of you. And one of my favorite parts of this story is how you do talk about him. And I think, and he is one of your dearest friends, but has passed. And so I think just to talk about him would also be wonderful for his family and his friends that might see this, and to know that his memory is still alive. And I'm gonna read. I'm just gonna read. I'm a co-author. I'm a co-contributor. So I'm gonna read since you won't. But these are some lessons that she learned from John, who the book is dedicated to, right? I'm not saying that wrong. You did dedicate this book to him. Okay. So here are the lessons that John taught you. And I think this is a great way to end. You never know who is going to become a big part of your life in the future. So that means you need to be intentional about being kind to others today. Kindness matters, moments matter. We don't know what the future holds years from now. So now, let alone on a day-to-day basis. Moments in time are not guaranteed. In life, there are no guarantees. We may think we'll have the next chance, we'll talk another day, or we'll get together soon, but we just don't know. The only guarantee, the only thing that we can try to control is what we are doing today, this moment right now. We need to live for that moment. And I just think that is a wonderful message to share and to end. And again, you don't have to be alone. Please join us in our Facebook community. And we want to give, and before I do also want to give a special thanks to the Alice Keeler community. She is letting us be on her YouTube and part of that. So thank you, Alice. And if you have any final thoughts, do you want to share before we go?
No, thank you for reading that. Yeah, it was after when I was putting it together, and I was thinking, like I said, about the true story and about that one kid, and I tell the story about John in there just because I realized like he was that one kid and how I was so wrong about him. And like I didn't know him in high school, but we ended up planning high school reunions together somehow for I don't know how many years, and it was just there were shenanigans. That's why some of the pictures are in the book, and I always had to bring a notebook, which is symbolic of the notebook paper on the cover, but yeah, it's been almost 2 years, and you know, he was an educator. He was a friend to everybody. Probably drove everybody crazy at time again, like we all do. But just what an impact he had on so many people, and so I just thought, just going to write about it. It wasn't like I intended to do it. Just kind of ended up being that way, and I felt very strongly about including that in that message, and so that is a true story.
Yeah. Whew, I got to keep drinking my water because I'm starting to get that tickle.
Yeah.
Yes. And so thank you. And I wish that I could have met him. You did a great job of making a tribute for his life. And I absolutely, it did make me cry. And I know it made you too. I'm sorry, I got you all teary. So thank you so much for joining us, Rachelle. And I hope that you'll tune in next week when I have another author, our dear friend, Lainey Rowell with Evolving Learner. So tune in for next week. And again, and also before we leave, I'm going to put this on one more time. You can actually get Rachelle's book tonight at a special price and signed. If you go to bit.ly/bookorderpoth, you can get a signed copy of this wonderful book and at a special price. So thank you so much for doing that, Rachelle. I hope that you have a wonderful evening and that you continue to share everything that you're learning and reflecting on.
Well, thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.